Hello again, and welcome to the music theory lesson I call Music Theory is Only a Theory, because I'm trying to make some applied theory here, something that actually makes sense to you as far as song structure goes. And if you're playing popular songs at all, then you're aware that they have chords, and some have a lot of chords and some have just a few. And you might ask yourself why. Well, a lot of times when it's just a few, we're using certain chords from what you might deem and what I call a chord scale. The idea is that in any key, let's say the key of C to start with, no sharps, no flats, supposedly. In any key, you're going to have certain chords that adhere to that scale. And as you move up in chord position, usually on a piano, that's thumb, middle, pinky, 1, 3, 5, or 1, 3, 5 of the scale. As you move up, you're going to find yourself playing different chords. And as a result of adhering to the chord scale, or the key signature, in this case, no sharps or flats with the key of C, you're going to have chords that don't have sharps or flats in them. But I take exception with this, because I feel the seventh chord, which ends up being a diminished chord if you move up in triads, 3 notes at a time, sounds better if you flat that seventh. And in fact, it's called the tonic seventh in music theory, because when you flat the 7, it creates the chord C7. So if you're playing a C on the guitar, and you add the pinky to create the C7th, that is not the 7th note of a C scale. It's the flatted 7th note, or the tonic 7th note. So the C scale would sound like this. That sounds kind of funny, right? Doesn't sound like the normal scale that we hear. Okay, and it's important to train your ear to notice the difference between the tonic 7 and the major 7th, the actual 7th of the major scale. So here's the major scale with the major 7th, B. And here it is with the minor 7th, or flatted 7th, or tonic 7th. You'd hear them, all kinds of names. But when you see it on a piece of music, it, just like C is really C major, C7 is really C major plus a tonic 7 or a flatted 7. It's not C major 7th, which has its own designation, C major 7, which means you add the B natural. But when you add the B flat, even though that sounds a little wrong when you're going up the scale, it sounds great when added to a C7th. Now, the Beatles took that and went up to C sharp 7th by playing just the middle notes of the guitar, no E strings. Here's your D7, Beatles style, E flat 7. A lot of English bands use this in 7s, not just the Beatles, but they definitely popularized it. One that sounds good with the E strings, E7th, played at the 5th fret. If I were to do that. And then F7th, F sharp 7th, G7th, G sharp 7th, A7th. So the idea is that that 7th sound is kind of almost funky. It's got a feeling of blues to it. It's not classical sounding when it's on its own like that. And sure enough, if you were to use the 7th in a blues progression, it really adds a lot to the bluesy sound. So here's the 1, 4, 5 in C, F, and G. Call that 12-bar blues, but it sounds like pop or country because of those major chords. Now let's change it. Add the 7th, the tonic 7th. Big difference, right? Adds the bluesy element. Now that's a barred F7, not an easy chord to create. But the C7th isn't a problem. And then of course the open G7th is pretty easy too. That's like a folk chord, you know. but that F7 chord, oh yeah. Now that was the 1-4-5 progression, so that used the first and the fourth and the fifth chord of the C scale. C, D, E, F, number 4, G, number 5, A, B, C. But what I'm suggesting when it comes to the chords of the chord scale is that we flat the 7th note using the tonic 7 instead of the major 7th. And the reason I like that is because it's more applicable. It's more applicable to what we're doing in popular and rock music and soul music. Because if you think about it, like what you have when you play the 3 chord progression, if you're playing something like Sweet Home Alabama, right, is D, C, and G. But we assume that that song's in the key of G because that would be 5, 4, and 1 in the key of G. And it makes sense, you know, if G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, C is 4, D is 5. D, C, G. The 5, 4, 1. Still using the 1, 4, and 5 chords, but in a different order. We talked about that last time. And the time before. Doesn't matter what order. All right. With that in mind, though, you can see where if you thought of the song as being in D, and a lot of people do, yeah, what's the first chord? What's the last chord? Well, it is D. Right? So, let's assume it's in the key of D. Then that 7 in the key of D is C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. And you hear that a lot with D chord. You'll hear the C chord playing its role, like the Bad Company song. That's in the key of D. Right? So it's using a 7th chord, a chord designated by the 7th note of the scale. And it's not C sharp. It's not C sharp diminished. It's not a chord that rarely gets used in rock and pop music. It's a chord that often gets used, the C chord. So in the chord scale that I'm going to teach you today, not only are we going to review the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6 minor, we're going to fill in the numbers that we haven't gotten to. Meaning we're going to talk about the 1 chord, the 2 chord, which by the way is always a minor chord, the 3 chord, which is also always a minor chord. The exceptions to both of these being when we talk about the relative minor scales. We are not there yet. The 4 chord, the 5 chord, we know about these, been working on these for a few weeks. The 6 minor, the relative minor, always a minor once again. And now the flatted 7th chord, the chord that takes the 7th note of the major scale and flats it. It could be C sharp as the 7th chord, like in the key of D, and you flat it to become C natural. So it's not necessarily going to have the name such and such flat, but the point is that you take it a half step lower, you flat it, and that it becomes the 7th chord of the scale. So, C, that's the first chord of a C chord scale. D minor, because D is the 2nd note. And remember I said it's always minor. All white keys on the piano. We'll be talking about that in the piano section. E minor. Notice how these chords seem to all go together. That's the purpose of the chord scale, is to give you a template, a vocabulary of chords that you can utilize to play all kinds of songs. And we'll be doing them in the main keys of the guitar, C, G, D, A, and E, which creates a circle of fifths. So all kinds of theory coming in, but slowly but surely, and only as we need it. After E minor, number 4 is F. We've done that. Number 5 is G. We've done that. Like La Bamba. C, F, and G. 1, 4, and 5. 6, A minor. bringing up relative minor because sure enough, G chord, 5 chord, not E minor, E major. Yeah, only in minors, only in minor keys. A minor is the relative minor to C major, but minors have more options. We'll get to that next lesson. In the meantime, number 5, B flat. Wait a minute, that's a bar chord, right? I made all open chords for the whole C scale. C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor. B flat can be pointer, pinky, ring, and open string. That's an open B flat, probably the simplest way. A lot of people add the other finger because then it's like an A that's been capoed. Or you can bar it, whatever you're into. But now, you're seeing the point of the 7th chord being flatted. If you're playing C to F, that's 1 to 4. When you go to that B flat, that's the 7th being flatted, much more usable in rock music and soul. This is Cheers of a Clown right here. The smile on my face, it's only... Right? So it works both ways, R&B and rock, and country for that matter. You know, you have songs, let me go to the F. You hear that all the time, that 7 to the 4 to the 1. Now you know why I like to flat the 7th chord. And once again, music theory is only a theory. They wouldn't have you do that, okay? Because while it may be applicable to rock and pop music and soul music and that sort of thing, it has nothing to do with classical music, which is what music theory is about, and jazz to some degree. But that's not what you're going to get here. You're going to get here just the basics to get you rocking, to get you into more current styles of music. Now, with that in mind, keep in mind that this minor chord thing is looming large. Every time we talk about a major chord scale, there's a tougher to understand minor chord scale weighting that's relative to that major chord scale, using a lot of the same chords, but also using more chords, more variety. So keep in mind that we're going to wait on that to understand that. But whatever the case may be, with the A minor, the only 3 minor chords in the C chord scale that I just showed you were A minor, E minor, and D minor. And that's how Bill Withers plays Ain't No Sunshine. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Right? So 1 to 5. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. There's the 5, the E minor. She's always gone too long. There's the 4, D minor. Anytime she goes, right? And that's the whole song other than I know, I know, I know. That's just percussion, right? So, if you're playing that song, you may be thinking to yourself, he just said A was 1, and E was 5, and D was 4. But I thought C was 1, and F was 4, and G was 5. See why I don't like numbers in music? Why I don't like music theory? It does get confusing. But the truth is, Ain't No Sunshine ends on A minor. Also begins on it. It's very much in a minor key. It never plays a major chord the whole song. So, if you're very much in a minor key, then you're in A minor, not C major. It's different, okay? So this is the introduction to that concept, which is, in the key of A minor's number 1. Whereas in the key of C major is the number 1 chord. And let's make that the primary difference between the minor and major scales for now. So for your first minor scale assignment, you'll want to learn Ain't No Sunshine. Once again, A minor, E minor, A minor. And in the chorus it goes to E minor, to D minor, to E minor, A minor, E minor, and A minor. Pretty much a minor blues is what we would call that, because the 1, 4, and 5, but all minors. See, if that was major, that'd be A, D, and E. But it's not Wild Thing, it's, Sunshine. Big difference, right? And the chords obviously make a big difference. Okay, all right, I'm gonna go to the bass now, and then of course the piano.